Hello again, and welcome back to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are looking at day 68 for Sunday, March 8th, 2020, focusing on Joshua chapters 14 through 17. So we are done with most of the conflict and the conquest of the Promised Land, and we are seeing now the allotment and dividing up of the land among the tribes of Israel. So we take a look starting at Joshua 14. Now we see that with the Promised Land being mostly conquered, the Israelites gathered to distribute the land west of the Jordan River by lot. Remember, the 2.5 tribes inherited the land east of the Jordan River, which they conquered as well. But as it states a couple times, that no portion was given to the Levites in the land, but only towns to live in with their pastures and their flocks and their herds, from Joshua 14:4. And so these are the 6 cities of refuge and the 42 towns and pastures in their surrounding areas that were discussed on day 51 in Numbers chapter 35. So it's fulfilling a lot of what has already been stated and said about planning for the future in receiving the land in Canaan. Now we're going to take a brief moment to focus on an important character, one who's been a leader but hasn't been the primary leader in any of the particular roles that he's been a part of. This is the figure of Caleb. Now Caleb is the character, as we remember, who was first mentioned in Numbers 13. And he was a representative of the tribe of Judah. He was sent by Moses to be a scout in the Promised Land, to judge the individuals there and to talk about what the land was like. And so Caleb was one of the 2 spies who came back with a favorable report. It was both Caleb and Joshua, the same Joshua that this text is named after. So Caleb, along with Joshua, are the ones who believed that they could conquer the people, as it was said in Numbers 14:8. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. And then in Numbers 34:19, we see that Moses makes Caleb, a tribal leader of the tribe of Judah. I imagine this has to do with that Caleb was not swayed by his fellow Israelites, who, after the other 10 gave their report, were doubtful of ever entering the Promised Land, and so much so that they threatened to stone Caleb to death for giving a favorable report to Moses. So Moses remembered that, thought he was a great leader, and he became the tribal leader of the house of Judah. In addition to all of what Caleb has done for the Israelites, God promised him land because of his faithfulness back in Numbers 14. In verse 24 it said, "But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and followed me wholeheartedly, I bring into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it." Now, moving back to our story here in Joshua 14, Caleb recounts all of these events and remembers God's promise to his family to possess the land that he scouted in. He gives thanks to God for 45 more years of life after the time of being a scout, and for seeing the Israelites succeed in obtaining most of the promised land. In Joshua 15, which is repeated upcoming in the story of Judges, chapter 1, Caleb conquers the Anakites and fights with the people of Debir. Caleb offers that whoever conquers Debir can marry his daughter, and this is important because land distribution will be a part of this. So Othniel succeeds, and then his daughter asks and is given land with springs of water in the Negev desert. So That is mentioned a couple times because it is important, but I haven't really studied too much why that story comes up twice and is mentioned as much. But we could see that it's significant because it's mentioned 2 times over our section today. Now, Joshua 15 has the restatement of Caleb's claiming of his portion of the land and fighting with the residents still there. Then it has the land allotment of the tribe of Judah, which Caleb was a part of. In Joshua 15:63 it says, "But the people of Judah could not drive out the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem." So the Jebusites live with the people of Judah in Jerusalem to this day. Now, to this day is whenever it was written and recorded. It is not our current modern day times. Though there's probably some truth to that, but anyways, it is not currently there. So we see a couple things. One, I think the main thing I take away from this is that Jerusalem was hard to conquer. And so Jerusalem being hard to conquer makes me think that, it's the city up, on the hill. It is a city that is harder to get to. And it's also the city that becomes the central place for King David's united kingdom. And then during the Babylonian exile and the conquest by Babylon of the promised land, where they will exile God's people, that this is this is the last city that will fall in the Babylonian conquest, and they have to in fact do a siege of it and cut off the supply chains there in the city of Jerusalem. King Nebuchadnezzar does that. So we see that this conquering of Jerusalem is a hard thing to do. We see in Joshua chapter 16 that the allotment of the Josephites, the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim, that Joseph's 2 sons who were split the double portion that was allotted to Joseph because Reuben lost his birthright, and in that stead, Joseph was given a double portion of allotment by his father Jacob or Israel. And so he gets a double portion, and his 2 sons basically get to share an equal portion with their uncles. So Ephraim is discussed here in Joshua 16:10. It says, "They did not, however, drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites had lived within Ephraim to this day, but have been made to do forced labor." So we see that another peoples who were called to drive out their fellow representatives, that they were unsuccessful in driving them out. Joshua 17 talks about the second portion of the Manasseh distribution, their portion west of the Jordan, because they have a portion east of the Jordan as well. And this has a lot to do with the daughters of Zelophehad. Picking it up in Joshua 17:3, we've discussed the daughters of Zelophehad before previously when they've been mentioned a couple times, but due to not having male offspring, they still want an inheritance, but they will be required to marry the kinsmen of the sons of Manasseh in order to keep the land and the inheritance. But we see that Maliah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah, that they are the daughters, and they come before the high priest, they're Eleazar and Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders, and say, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance along with our male kin." So they gave an inheritance. And there they fell to the Manasseh 10 portions beside the land of Gilead and Bashan, which is on the other side of Jordan, because the daughters of Manasseh received an inheritance along with his sons. The land of Gilead was allotted to the rest of the Manassites. But we also hear as well too, the Manassites had trouble getting rid of the Canaanites as well too. It says in Joshua 17:12-13, "Yet the Manassites could not take possession of those towns, but Canaan continued to live in the land. But when the Israelites grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not utterly drive them out." That's a theme that's repeated as Moses called them to utterly drive out any of these people in the land who God was, spitting out, so that way the Israelites could take and receive the land. They were not able to get rid of all of them, and so that sense of worshiping other gods and idolatry will in fact be a festering issue for the people of God throughout this whole time. Right after the discussion of the daughters of Zelophehad and then the distribution of the Manassites, we see that the tribe of Joseph, which is not one of the 12 ancestral tribes, it's one of the sons of Israel, but not the ancestral tribe, the ones who were designated with a portion. Levi is not part of the ancestral tribes who get allotment of land, because the Levites were in charge of the priestly function, and so they were busy doing the rituals in the tabernacle. So the tribe of Joseph protests against Joshua's disbursement, but Joshua encourages them, saying that with their victories in battle to come, picking up in 17:18, "The hill country shall be yours, for though it is a forest, you shall clear it and possess it to its furthest borders. You shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have chariots of iron and though they are strong." Joshua believes that God will bless them and God will help them, but yet at the same time we learn that they don't in fact drive them out, maybe because they're too scared or afraid. So I hope that you are of good courage and that you are strong and follow God wherever God leads, and may that lead to blessings and fun stories for you.